This is Career Competitor, and it is the podcast that believes we all have a competitive self that drives our optimal performance in our careers and within our lives. My name is Steve Mellor, and in the past 15 years, having been a coach to high performers, Olympians, business owners, executives across all walks of life, I have come to find that competitiveness comes from within. And I'm going to be using this podcast to really showcase how competitors from all walks of life are finding optimal performance and have built the careers that they have today. This episode of Career Competitor, the 200th episode of Career Competitor, I get to welcome in an old friend of mine, Milo Cavic, to join us. And Milo's going to get the introduction that he certainly deserves here in just a little bit. But some things to be looking out for in terms of just the general focus within our conversation. Firstly, Milo and I cover the importance of asking yourself, how is this serving me? So taking full ownership of how it is serving you. Secondly, we get into why even the most self-motivated person needs help in pursuing their dreams. And finally, we cover the importance of doing what makes you uncomfortable to achieve what you deserve. So, as I said there at the outset, this is the 200th episode, which firstly makes it awesome that I get to share it with someone like Milo, and you're going to hear a little bit about our story and how we've gotten to know each other over the years in different capacities here in just a second. But one of the sentiment I want to provide here is that I'm not allowing this episode to go by without really expressing the gratitude that I have to those of you that have either been listening to me from episode 1 all the way up to this 200th episode, and even those of you that are tuning in for the first time to episode 200, whoever it is, whoever you are, whichever walk of life you come from, just hear this, that I am grateful for you. I'm grateful to you for taking the time and choosing to use your time to better understand yourself, to invest in yourself, and to pursue your optimal self. That's what this show's become in the 200 episodes. It didn't necessarily start off as that, but it certainly transformed into that, which makes it as powerful today as it ever has been. So again, I just appreciate you choosing to listen to this show because I know how many countless podcasts there are out there for you to choose from. So thank you for that. And I really am so thankful and grateful that I have this opportunity to bring in someone like Milo for this particular episode because it is an absolute belter of an episode, and I'm excited for you all to enjoy. So without any further delay, let's do it. Episode 200 of Career Competitor with my guest, Milo Cavic, and I hope you all enjoy. Hey, before we carry on with this episode, let me bring your attention to a link that you'll find right there in the show notes so that you can subscribe to my monthly email. It's just going to give you some awesome insights on who it is I am, what it is I've got going on, and maybe there'll be one or two food for thoughts in there that can stimulate your process, get you to get a little unstuck, get you to take a little bit more action, and maybe get you a little closer to optimal performance as you start to shape a stronger version of your optimal self. Go ahead, click that link in the show notes so you can become part of the ever-growing email list that's receiving this awesome insight each and every month, courtesy of me and courtesy of Career Competitor. Now, back to the episode. Okay, on this episode of Career Competitor, I am delighted to be welcoming in a guest that I've known in a variety of forms, some of which include a world record holding swimmer I once admired, a colleague I shared an office with, a client I once coached, and as of this moment, a friend of mine. I consider myself blessed to have known and have in my world. But in his professional world today, our guest is a small business owner providing both elite swim teaching and motivational speaking services to those looking to overcome what's holding them back from becoming the hero that they dream about. A true example of what it means to pursue your optimal self in life. Our guest has found a way to come through it all with a passion to keep working towards his best self. A true competitor in every sense of the word. It's my pleasure to welcome into Career Competitor the man, the myth, the legend that is Milo Cavic. How are we, brother?
Hey, I'm great, Steve. And what a wonderful intro. You've clearly been a part of my journey, and seeing you sort of transition away from coaching in one way and to coaching another way. It's just, I always knew that this guy had this thing about it. He's a coach at heart. So, as you mentioned, we shared an office together. And later on in life, I knew that what you had gotten into, I found myself sort of between a rock and a hard place. And I trust this guy. I know what he's about. Let me try out his service. Let me try out what he's doing today. And sure enough, you've done a lot for me, Steve. I really do appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate that. No, I appreciate you giving me that opportunity, but you've taught me more than maybe you appreciate. And I think we're going to go into certainly uncovering some of that throughout our conversation here. And the one thing I really just want to acknowledge, what I'm really excited about, is just how much of a point this is for the show. I would have gone into this in the introduction, but this is the 200th episode of Career Competitor. And I was thinking about who I wanted the 200th episode to be for some time. And as much as I kept sort of trying to overthink it, as I typically would do, there was this very obvious answer right in front of me when we started having a little chat on social media a little while ago. And why it made sense for you, Milo, to be the 200th episode is, one, you speak to why I started this show all the way back, episode 1, former athlete, using so many of the same qualities that made you the competitor that you were back then, and allowing you to be the success and continue to build the success that you're building for yourself today. So that right there was an absolute obvious part of this. But the other part of this, though, too, is, as I alluded to in the intro, your passion and your desire to continually accept that there are ways that you can continue to invest in yourself, ways for you to continue to better yourself. And the fact that you're now embodying exactly that in the work that you're doing for others is what makes this just a completely ideal episode. And plus, you got a lot of followers on social media too, so let's not forget that part as well. We got to market this thing, for crying out loud. I'm just kidding. But brother, honestly, those first two things, dude, that is my. I wanted you to understand that before we got started here, because again, this wasn't just a, hey, let's just do an episode and just act like, passing 200 episodes doesn't mean a whole lot. It does mean a whole lot. I'm proud of it, but it meant a lot to me to be able to have you be this 200th episode. So I just want you to understand that's where I'm coming from and what I'm really excited about within this episode.
Yeah,
too.
Steve, you and I sort of come from that sports background of swimming, and, we speak the same language as far as that goes. But, as an athlete, life is pretty, as I heard, black and white, right? Like if you work hard, you get a result that's, let's just say, more white than black. And if you don't do anything, then it's complete blackness. Now, the problem was, when I got out of my career, was sort of learning to live in the gray. It's not all about you. When it's about you, if you do everything you can, if you cross all the T's and dot all the I's and do your best, you're going to get, let's just say, you're more in control of your end result. Whereas, in the real world, it's not all about you. You've got kids now. So, you got kids, you're married, you've got your business, you got different things in life that you got to balance. And a part of being a business owner and doing things is depending on other people too. And the most you can do is your best, and in hope that you can surround yourself or work with people that are like-minded in your goals. And essentially, not everybody is. And when you're working with people, they're either bought in or they're not. And if they're not, then, you might be driving this bus or guiding this person in a direction. But if they don't want what they say they want, then they're not going to get that result, that lighter color result. So, yeah, man, it's great to see that you're still in the game and doing wonderful things, serving people online and in person. And I just, you inspire me, and we'll sort of talk a little bit more about that in just a bit.
Well, we're not just here to stroke one another's egos. We're going to dive into some stuff here. So, and really where I want to start is something you alluded to there, because here you are speaking from this perspective that life has allowed you to create. We are both the beneficiary of experience, of time, of old age. Our hairline has, proves exactly that. The fact of the matter is, we were both a competitor back when we were swimmers, that we don't necessarily, for lack of a better term, I would say that, and I'll speak from just my perspective, I don't necessarily associate with that guy anymore. That guy's probably not as good for me anymore as the competitor that I've now become today. But something that you said there as you were talking is you talk about at the end of the day, though, as a competitor, when you continually say, this is what I want, and yet everything about your process and your habits for whatever, like whatever, if all of this stuff continues to show that, well, wait, you're not embodying these things that you claim that you want, I'm just curious that how much of that remains sort of when you look back to the competitor that you were. You claimed that you wanted everything in the sport of swimming, and you just about achieved it all. And now here you are speaking from this different competitive mindset, but it sounds as though that part of the competitor has not gone away. If you're going to speak about it, you're going to live to it in some shape or capacity. So just talk to me a little bit about the importance of not only explaining what it is you want, but then living to it, almost holding yourself accountable to it. How do you relate to that?
First, I want to sort of speak to something that you said that really resonated with me. You said, I'm not that guy who I was 5 years ago, when you said, that person that I wasn't, who isn't who I am today and isn't who I want to ever sort of be in the future. And it's so true. I'm not who I was 5 years ago. I'm definitely not who I was 10 years ago when I was an athlete. And at the height of my career, in between 2005 and 2009, 2010, like, that was a guy who was ready to cut everything and everyone out of their life if they were not on the train. All right. It was, some of the most selfish people I've ever met are professional athletes. And it's not because it's within their character, but it's almost necessary. You're doing whatever it takes to be the best in the world. And not everybody wants that. And, there are a lot of strengths to having that mindset. You're looking at everything as a business decision. If I eat this, how many grams of protein am I getting versus if I eat that? I just had a very, very hard workout. It's a power workout. Should I be eating pasta or should I be having 2 steaks? Everything that you encounter within your relationships to what you consume and what you think, it is a business decision. Is this serving me? So, as an athlete and the animal that I was, it served me very, very well, but there's always another edge to that sword. And it also made me realize at that time, like, how lonely was I? I've been cutting people out of my life. They sort of understood, but not to the sense that I understood what I wanted. And it was necessary. I feel that it was necessary at the time. As I got older, I started becoming more responsible for other people. And that's when I evolved. The president of Serbia once told me when I was 24, he's like, hey, Milo, you got to have a kid. I'm like, Mr. President, this is terrible advice. I'm 24. He's like, no, you got to have a kid. And I thought to myself, like, what was he saying behind this? And it wasn't until I became a father that I truly understood what he said. And what he meant was, it had nothing to do with having kids. It meant, Milo, the moment you become responsible over another life, responsible over your own company, which has employees, all right, or in his case, responsible over a country, you evolve into something out of necessity. So it wasn't until I became a father that I had this little life that's like, hey, I don't perform. If I don't do my thing, then he's going to starve. And similarly, if you don't do well for your company, then your employees, they lose their jobs, which is effectively taking food out of their mouths. So you're asking me, like, how do I handle expectations? It's like, well, look, set the goal, understand what's at stake, and really sort of understand, like, hey, like, what's my why behind this? If my values are not in line with why it is that I'm doing this, like, you're probably not going to have that ultimate white result or that light colored result. And to be clear, nothing is 100% perfect, not even close. So if it's between black and white, you want the lightest gray possible. Meeting expectations. Gosh, I don't like to be that guy, but those who fail to prepare must prepare to fail, right? And I sort of look at what will happen if I don't do this, and at the end of the day, we all procrastinate. We all sort of second guess ourselves, ask ourselves, can we do this? And you sort of ask yourself, like, what have I done? What have I literally done to sort of deserve or move in the direction of this result? And that's once a couple years back, enter stage Steve Mellor, and he was sort of one of those important people that just sort of started blowing wind into the sails that I was, and it all sort of started with the question of like, hey man, like, what do you want to do, and why is this important?
Yeah, and I want to stop you there before we go any further because, firstly, I mean, there's so much good stuff here, and where I want to start, just from what you just said here, is for someone to be able to have almost the strength. I'm going to call it the strength to ask the question: is this serving me? Is this serving me? Because as an athlete, you do need to be selfish a lot of the time with the way in which you answer that question, because there will be people that may not be literally trying to prevent you from achieving your goals, but by having them in your world, those goals become more difficult, and their influence makes achieving those goals more difficult. But then, as you said, you move out of that world and you get into the business space, you get into the real world space, parenthood, whatever it might be. That same question applies. And if anything, the stakes are actually higher. It's always hard to convince an athlete that there are actually stakes that get higher than an Olympic Games. But turns out when you leave that world of your sport, you realize how small that world actually was. And you're just like, oh, this thing that is life, the whole world thing, this thing is enormous compared to this teeny tiny world that I was operating in all this time. And so while you're in that world, that serves you. And I think a lot of what you said about the way you went about what you did, it resonates with me. And I think it was important for you to have the success that you did. But that transitional phase, because I feel like I caught you when we started working together back in 2016. I think I caught you at that time when you were still transitioning from that athlete mindset into where it is we all have this privilege now to sort of enjoy you today and the way you're sharing with us today. So I'm just curious, was it parenthood? Because you'd recently become a dad back then around 2016, 2017. I think I'm getting my dates right. Yeah. And so with that being said, I'm just curious, was it that, I say simple act of parenthood that provided and gave you that catalyst to start working on these things, or was there something else? Like, just talk me through that transitional phase.
After finishing my career in 2012, I sort of thought, well, what am I going to do with my life? And I had this swimming school, and I was going with that thing, and the city that I was working in the country of Serbia, like it essentially gone bankrupt, and a lot of people work in the public sector in that city. It was a good number of like 35%, which is crazy. I had sort of abandoned that, and I thought to myself, well, like I'm competitive, I'm a hunter by nature. I'm going to go into sales. So, I went into the wealth management businesses, do a lot of athletes. You got this energy, you got this persona, and I was doing that for close to 2 years, and I was like, but this isn't me. Like, just to be clear, financial advisors, you need one. You need one. It's just you don't think that you're ready all the time. But in any case, like when I was doing it, I just didn't feel like I was serving people in the way that my spirit animal wanted or needed to serve. And it was about that time that I became a father, which sort of got me thinking, okay, like, well, what do I need to do with my life? And an opportunity to work where you were working opened up. I took that job, and that's sort of where we met. And getting back into sports at that level, it was interesting, just because I was coming from a background of like, hey, like, you do whatever it takes, like you do what it takes. And here you were, you essentially were working. I mean, we were both working with athletes that essentially didn't want what I wanted, right? And it really got me thinking. It's like, hey, like, you're a part of this team. We're talking about these big goals, but you're speaking air or words that are not in tune with what it is that you're showing, right? And, essentially, it really just got me thinking. It's like, hey, like, if I can't get people to, they're not self-motivated, it's like, well, what is it going to take to get them to sort of act on what it is that they were saying? It wasn't until years later that, until recently that I just sort of thought like, well, you know what, like you got to stop coaching someone from your point of view and start coaching them from their point of view. Get down to their level. Where are you at? What is it that you're thinking? Why are you thinking that? What's holding you back? And what are the steps that you think you need to sort of take on in the direction of holding yourself accountable? Because if I tell you what to do, Steve, I mean, think back to when your mother told you to clean your room. How did you feel?
Didn't want to do it.
You felt like a victim.
Didn't want to do it.
You felt like a victim. It's like, why are you doing this to me? And as you got older, you went from being a victim to start fighting back. You said, Mom, I'm going to clean my room later. And eventually, she or your dad stopped fighting you. It's like, you know what? Do it your way. You know everything that you need to know. And eventually, one day, you're walking through your room and you step on something sharp underneath your shirt or your sock or whatever. And you're like, ah!
Yeah.
And you look and it's this toy or whatever. And you're like, I'm hurt now because I didn't listen to Mom and Dad who told me to clean my room. So all of a sudden, I'm taking responsibility for my actions.
Right.
My point is this. When somebody makes you do something, you fight them, you resist them. Whereas if you're able to explain something like, hey, like I just don't want you to get hurt, right? Like everything I'm going to tell you is going to be from a good place. Like I don't want you to be injured. And if you can sort of ask them, like, how can you move about your life without getting hurt or without these things happening? I think it's a more sustainable way to help you go about your life. So staying accountable, well, first assess your why, and then ask myself like, well, okay, this is what I want. So what do I feel like I need to do? And how can I do those things in my way, in ways that I like, so that I can actually not look at this task as sort of a burden, but rather like, hey man, like, I get to do what I like to do in my way toward this goal. And I think staying accountable is a lot easier when you sort of do it your way.
Definitely. And gosh, I love all this. Mainly because when I think about where we started here, when I sort of shared that sentiment of taking that ownership and saying like, hey, how does this serve me? To go up to someone and just say, hey, listen, this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it. The likelihood of them actually applying it is significantly less than if they're able to get that life experience and learn it for themselves and be able to say, hey, now that I've hit this wall, I've realized that what I'm doing is not serving me. And that there's an opportunity now for me to do something else or do something about it or learn from a lesson, and suddenly now I'm on my way and I'm taking greater possession and ownership of the way I show up, why I do what I do. And we get to the heart of some of these deeper elements of everything that you're talking about, these foundational elements, if you will, for why you go do what you do, why you make that goal the goal that you've decided to make as your goal. And I'm curious now, when you think you've gone through that transition, you were in college coaching for a very short time, and then you immediately decided like, hey, I'm gonna get into club coaching, and then it turned into what you're doing now with the small business. What I love about it is you have, over the course of 5 or 6 years, which is a very normal amount of time, to be clear, in terms of like, yeah, it does take 5 or 6 years, people. For those of you out there that want to click your fingers and have everything figured out, it doesn't work with a click of the fingers. You have to invest in yourself over extended periods of time. So over these last 5 or 6 years, if you've continue to pour into yourself, continue to develop yourself, you find yourself in a position of influence now with what it is you're doing in the work that you're doing. I'm just curious, what does the ideal Milo Cavic client look like? What are you looking for in someone to say, bingo, you need to be working with me?
Somebody, look, ideally somebody who's self-motivated, but if they were self-motivated, they may or may not need someone like you or I.
Well, I want to challenge you on this, because I think this is really important, because this is key, and you can be self-motivated and still need help. Like that is so important, because there's everything about, I've had this privilege to learn so much about Milo Cavic, the athlete, over the years. You've given me so much insight off air in terms of how you became what you became. And you were so incredibly self-motivated, but you still worked with some of the best coaches on planet Earth in the sport of swimming. So with that being said, firstly, I would say for someone who was talking to you on behalf of your business, I would be like, you'd be damn right to try to find clients that are self-motivated. That makes a ton of sense. But I'm just curious, like, if you were to stay in that headspace, let's say someone comes to you and you know that they're self-motivated. Why is that exciting for you? Why do you know, like, oh, boom, this is the person that I need to be working with, and why?
So someone who's self-motivated, for me, they've got this fire inside of them. It's sort of like they know what they want to do, they just don't know how to do it, or they can't bring themselves to do it. So you're absolutely right. There are self-motivated people that need help. I, in fact, really do believe that we all need a coach in our lives. So, like you asked them, like, what's the ideal client? How about we just start with somebody who's really, really honest? I'm really honest. I've done quite a few podcasts. Some people would say that I'm one of the most honest podcasts that they've ever watched. And
that's why you're on mine, brother. That's all we do on this.
And is one of your clients. I do recall myself babbling to you, but it's just like, hey, I'm processing my thoughts. I'm not filtering what I think. I'm just saying what I feel. So for me, the perfect client is just somebody who's just courageous enough to say what they feel. Because if you're able to give it form, whatever it is that's blocking you or that's keeping you back, if you're able to give it form, let's just give it a name. Let's give it a form. Let's sort of make it tangible or create a human being of it. Where we're able to sort of put our finger down on, like, well, tell me about this pain, tell me about that pain, and how does that make you feel? And basically, by verbalizing what we feel or what we think, we're able to come up with the answers ourselves in many cases. So ideally, if you're self-motivated and you're honest, we're definitely going to point a laser at that one thing that's really sort of that speed bumper holding you back, and let's deconstruct it. Let's talk about it. And let's
well, I just want to say there that this is really important. Like the notion of if you've got someone who's courageous enough to want to share what's going on, to really get to the heart of what's holding them back or they think is holding them back, to then explain and get into that person that say, listen, now that you've shared it with me, or now that you've put it out into the universe, just understand that that's just the beginning. That just putting it out there doesn't mean that it's resolved. Putting it out there is the courageous act, no doubt. No doubt that is the courageous act. But now that it's out there, the best thing that those that are invested in you can do is to use your analogy, is just get that laser pen and point right at it every single day. Every single time you feel any sense of resistance internally, go back to that thing that you were courageous enough to share about why you've decided to start the work, why you've decided to start pursuing the goal. Because you say it yourself, even in some of your marketing, like to go after a dream, realizing dreams that you've always, or make them happen, for crying out loud. And like, at the heart of that, a lot of the time when we use a term like dream, we attach words like hope and maybe and if. It's just like, well, what would it look like to get this stuff out so that you can now speak more constructively, more with greater ownership towards what this dream actually is, and now possess everything that comes with it, all the honesty, all the truth that surrounds like the process towards this dream that you're so insistent about pursuing. So I just want to really encourage anyone, firstly, that's listening, to have the courage to share with those that you trust the most, or share with a coach, like, this is what I think I'm capable of, or this is what I think is holding me back, and for the life of me, I can't figure it out. Because I'm here to tell you guys that there's a guy called Milo Cavic that came to me with a very similar sentiment about 2 years ago, and he put in a ton of work over about an 8-9 month period and started to figure some stuff out. That's where it starts. That's where it starts, by asking that question. And clearly, dude, like, you've lived that. You've experienced that.
At the time when, you and I had started working together, my marriage was falling apart, and you've got this, a lot of us in similar situations, you got this vision as to, why it is that you're waking up every day, why it is that you're doing what you're doing, why it is that you're earning, with the goals of the family. And then all of a sudden, when that's sort of taken off the table, it's just like, well, what's my purpose? Am I really just sort of going to work to, to put food on the table or to send some checks of support every single month. And it was the most humbling experience of my life. And I don't recall a time when I'd ever felt so low. Some of us, we were courageous enough to get a therapist, and and I'd gone through that process of trying to process it, just because for a lot of people it's sort of like a death in the family. It's one of the most difficult things that one might ever go through. And and I was tired of talking about the past, and I was like, I'm talking about the past, but like I want to look to the future. I'm more than this. And that's sort of when I saw that you had entered this line of work, and we're looking for some clients. I'm like, hey, like at the time you may not have been the most experienced, but I know who this man is. I know how he coaches, and I saw him talk to people, and it's just like I wanted to be one of those people a couple of times when you were talking to the athletes. I'm like, well, gosh, like, I want to talk to Steve about my life and how he could use that coaching in a different sphere. And boy, you got me working out again, and it's just like, I was an athlete. Like, I know what I got to do. It's like, dude, just go to the darn gym. It's right there. It's right there. But I couldn't do it. I was paralyzed. And sure, I was going through some difficult things, but then, it's also like, well, how do you want to leverage your business? How do you want to increase your business? And holy cow, like, I increased my business triple, and it was just like, well, what is it? You see what it is that you're doing, but it's like, what is it that you're not doing? And what would that look like? You mentioned, it's like, hey, ideally, what would your life look like if you were living the dream and doing things your way? It's just like, I just smile at that. It's just like, well, you're working for yourself. No one's telling you when to show up or when not to show up. But, I think it's really, really important to do something that you actually like to do, Steve, and hitting these walls, my friend. Gosh, what a brutal, a brutal, but wonderful teacher.
Yeah. No, it is brutal, but it is wonderful. It's just like, the one thing the space I try to operate in the work that I do now is I try to sort of say to people, like, I don't want you to hit the wall. I don't want to start with you having to
sometimes
hit the wall. I want you to know, and sometimes you got to, no doubt. And I've hit many a wall. But for me, I'm always talking to potential clients, especially like, what I know you don't think you need this right now, but everything you're telling me makes me think you're going to need this. So you can either wait to hit the wall, or we can just get started. And sadly, they go with the former. And but something that you were just saying here, and as we go, kind of reminisce a little bit on our experience as coach and client, but something that you said early on around this notion of what have I done to deserve what I have, and I want to come back to that now, because that was an area, and I'm going to start personally now. Like, for me, when I looked at just to rewind to when we were actually sharing an office back in 2016, I was doing so much work on myself at that time, to the point where I probably, on some days, I probably wasn't even ready or prepared to be in the world. Like, I probably could have done with like calling in sick and just keeping myself to
but
myself.
You never did.
But a lot of the time, I never did. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it failed pretty badly. But the fact of the matter is, though, at the heart of that is that I was always wrestling with this, like, dude, what are you actually doing? And what do you deserve based on what it is you're doing? And it was this back and forth, a lot of self-criticism, a lot of harsh inner talk. And then as I started to work through it, I started to realize that there are people around me that are going to start identifying the very value that I bring if I'm willing just to shut up inside my head and listen and pay attention to what's going on around me. And that was my first moment of growth. Like, this is where I was able to really just stop and say, there's a ton of evidence and people literally even trying to tell you what you do well and the value that you bring, but you're so adamant on trying to figure it out by yourself that you're not even paying attention to what is right in front of you. And I notice you go through that very process as your coach. And I've been able to watch from a distance now in the last year and a half since, of seeing you continue to grow, seeing you continue to explore what it means just to keep positioning yourself in your world to do what it is you do, to then deserve what it is you deserve. So I'm just curious, as you get to, let's bring it right into the present right now. And even with that forward focused mindset that you talked about before, What is it you're doing that allows you to deserve what it is you're getting currently within your world?
I'm making myself uncomfortable every day. For me, in writing programs and writing content, I do understand that the more I delve into one aspect of programming, the more I understand that I don't know. I'm the more I know, the more I understand that I don't know. And and by sitting down at my computer and just writing, I have to turn off that voice in my head telling me, hey, this is what the critics are going to say, or hey, this is why this is silly, or hey, this is why it's not going to work. I've already created this film in my mind that's going against my ability just to sit and to write. And one of my most favorite creative outlets is to write. Like, I love to write workouts. I love to just sit down and sort of run a simulation of how I think that this is going to go. And the truth is, Steve, there's that saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
Right.
You have this plan and you sort of go about executing it, and then something happens, and then it's your ability to sort of bounce back from that thing happening. It's just like, well, in life things will happen, and you got to learn to be okay with it. You got to learn to start dancing to whatever music's playing. But for me, in my ability to be prepared, because preparation is really, really important, I try to foresee certain things happening to have backup plans. But even then, things don't work out. And at the end of the day, I just sort of sit back and be like, there's that teacher. There's that brutal teacher that's doing this, not to me, but for me. All right, this is happening because this is something that I need on my tool belt for life. And again, I think that's really, really important. This isn't happening to me; it's happening for me. And when I do this, I'm constantly asked, it's like, well, I'm admired for just sitting and writing content and with the hope that one day I'm gonna give this to the world. It's like, well, this is my test. This is me putting myself to the test every day, making myself uncomfortable. The more I tell people that this is what I'm doing, the more pressure there is on myself to execute, because I don't want to look like an idiot, right? But at the same time, the more I talk about it, the more accountability that I feel, and again, the more I feel that I need to just put it out there and see what happens. This is the one way I'm going to learn, by just doing.
Yeah, I mean, the more I know, the more I realize I don't know. I mean, that's the beauty of the worlds we both operate in. And, it's just like getting to continually apply yourself more, learn more, and then get yourself to a point where you're just like, oh, now that I know this, I realize there's 57 other things that I actually don't know. That had I not learned this one thing, I wouldn't be aware of these 57 other things. And so there's that. And then as you sort of brought us through those thoughts to this notion of sharing your intentions to create accountability, a running theme throughout this conversation so far has just been this sort of courageous mindset, this notion of like, hey, what are you going to do to show yourself that you have the courage almost to represent your best self? Like that's kind of what we're getting to the heart to here. That's what's been at the constant throughout this conversation so far, is that all these different areas that you've taken us through the conversation, there's this inner Milo who's trying to represent the best version of himself throughout all these different capacities, throughout all these lessons and tribulations and whatever life's thrown at you. And so now to sort of say that you're in this space saying, listen, I'm going to put this out into the world, and until I do, I expect the world to hold me accountable to doing it, to following through. So talk to me about accountability. Just talk to me about how you find, almost in a way, the energy to be held accountable still. It'd be so easy for you and I at this point of our lives to be like, shoot, man, I've got enough going on. I don't need anyone else to hold me accountable. But you're not only accepting accountability, you're actually trying to create it. So just talk to me a little bit about how you do it.
I got a 7-year-old son. And one of the things that he loves to do, in the age of iPads and, video games, it's kind of harder. But, when we're sitting on an airplane or something, I give him like a maze. And as you know, if you want to really just dominate this maze, you start with the end. All right. And you sort of go backwards. And for me, when it was working out, It's just like, God, I don't want to go, but then I think to myself, like, well, tell me a little bit about how you feel when it's over. Like that workout's over. It's like,
Mhm.
my goodness, like I feel great. I'm full of energy. Like I feel like I really kicked life in the teeth. It's just like, okay, and how do you feel when you don't go? It's just like, well, I feel guilt. I don't feel that energy. I feel like I sort of I gave up on myself. So with myself, I look at what it is, how it is that I feel, at the end of the day.
Mm.
You said about you said with your clients, like, hey man, like I don't want you to hit this wall, but if you keep going this way, you will. So instead of hitting that wall, how about we get started right now? And it's just like, and you said, most
Right.
clients usually hit the wall, and it's just like, well, sometimes that's got to happen. And
Yeah.
for me, I've come to the point where I've hit the wall so many times, and it's just like, I don't want to feel this way. And so I just really sort of focus on, well, what is it that makes me feel great? What is it that gives to my life, not just physically from a health point of view, but also mentally and energy wise. And if I do that, then I'm gonna have more energy to do this. And if I have more energy to do this, then I will have more energy and success in doing that. And the way I just feel accountable, or the way I am accountable, is I just block out the time. Look, there's no way that you're going to get any of my time between 11:45 and 1
Mm.
p.m. All right. As far as working out goes, I know that there is my working period, which is usually from 3 to 7 in the afternoons, because that's a sort of when I'm at the pool, or when I'm working with clients on the internet, or at the pool. But as far as going the extra mile to build my content or write my content, what are you doing at 6 a.m.? What's going
Mhm.
on? You texting someone? It's like, no, like, I find times between 6 and 8 a.m. or between 10 and midnight at night to sort of build. My son's
Yeah.
building Legos and whatever he's doing in Minecraft. Well, this is me doing Minecraft or building Legos of my own life. I'm finding times when people will just leave me alone, and when I can be alone with my thoughts and just go for it.
Man, I love that, because we're very alike in this regard. Like you found a way to take lessons from parenthood and just sort of pull them into your own life. Because it's sometimes frightening when if you're really paying attention and you're around your kids, you learn a lesson while you're hanging out with them, and you go, oh, there's something there. Oh, this could serve me like in the grown-up world.
Yeah.
not the I'm playing it's a tea party with my 4-year-old daughter
Yeah.
world. This could actually serve me in the real world. And something that you've just been able to address here, which I've always been an advocate for and I've spoken to people about before, but I love the way you sort of discussed it, and I want to sum it up here. Like, we hold ourselves accountable if we're willing to listen to what our body's telling us. Our body literally tells us. It's literally telling us, hey, I feel guilt because I didn't do this thing. And then it's saying, I feel awesome because I did this thing. And if we push the guilt away enough, or we learn to not listen to the guilt, like, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? And that's what you're saying here, is like that our body is literally trying to hold us accountable, but it's up to us to listen, right? That's what you're saying.
Circling back to my kid, like kids, they when they cry, it elicits a response, but it's also like, very, very early on, it's the only way that they know how to express themselves. Today, as a 7-year-old, I look at him, and when he's throwing a tantrum, you have several ways you can go about it. But the reason why he's throwing a tantrum long after he's gotten what he wants is because he's not feeling like he's been heard.
Mm.
So circling back to what you just said, it's like, hey, like, what it is that you want to do. It's just like, well, this is what I want to do. It's like, okay, well, what do you think you got to do? It's like, well, I feel like you got to do this. And it's like, well, why do you still feel unhappy? You're not hearing yourself.
Right.
You're not, whatever it is that's inside, like, you hear what it is that you think you want to do. You have what it is that you think you need to do, but is what you think you need to do in line with your values? Because if it's not,
Right.
then you're not hearing yourself. You're not hearing who you are, and you're not going to be happy. So let's first align yourselves with what's important to us, and then sort of start making decisions from there.
Yeah, man. Gosh. Oh, a part of me wants to finish it there, man, because, gosh, that's powerful. And also, at the 43-minute mark, for anyone who's a swimmer that's just like, oh, I get to listen to the former swimmer that is Milo Cavic, and you came here to tune in to yet another account and another story of the famous finish from 2008, you're not getting it. You're not getting it. We're not going into that. We don't need to cover that story. It's been covered. All right, it's been covered. Are you in agreement here?
I'm in full agreement. I look back at my career, and when I was a kid, I did it for fun. When when I got older, I did it professionally, and when you do something for a paycheck or professionally, it becomes less fun and becomes more of a job.
Right.
And it wasn't until I lost my hair that I started looking at everything throughout my career as not as a sport, but as a teacher. Right. Everything that we did, whether it was athletics or playing the piano or playing chess or whatever it is that's your thing, you sort of look back and you're just like, you know what, that was hard, but it was also my teacher. I needed to lose. I needed to fail. I needed for this and that to happen. I needed to run into that kind of person and this kind of person so that I could ultimately find myself in this position, at least make smarter and better decisions.
Yeah. Man, it's your story, your journey is one to just have the utmost respect for. I have that for you. I have a lot of other emotions that are all from a similar sentiment for you too, but respect is up there as probably the one, because I've watched the work that you've done on yourself. And the best part about it is that from the world that you operate in, the swimming world, people will look at you as this sort of refined success, this standard, if you will, to work towards, to achieve. And here you are in that position, and what you could say is like, yeah, I've been there and I've done it, folks, and you need to try to do it too. No, you're not saying that. You're saying, I'm still doing the work. I'm still doing the work. Even in this position now, even having achieved what I've achieved, I'm here to tell you that the work has not only not stopped, but it sounds as though you're doing about as much as you've ever done before, which is it's so encouraging, it's so motivating, it's so inspiring, and you need to hear that from me because it's true, man.
I appreciate that, Steve. And look, I transitioned to this job that I feel like I'm pretty good at, but the more and more work that I do, the more I'm attaching that inner voice of hearing myself. What is my body telling me? It's just like, hey, why is it that you're thinking about that when you're doing this? And I'm bringing myself closer and closer to sort of alignment. And the only way to get there is to have an honest conversation with yourself. First, let's just be honest. Start from there.
Yeah. Or just hop on a podcast and have an honest conversation with someone.
Tell the world. Shock the world. Shock the world.
Shock the world. There you go. A little bit of marketing for me too. Appreciate that. But listen, man, before I let you go, tell anyone and everyone who might be either interested in some swimming stuff or motivational speaking too. You obviously do that as well. Tell everybody where they need to go to find out more.
Guys, go to swimwithmilo.com. I've moved into this mentorship role where, Steve, you're a life coach, and I graduated this 9-month intensive school to do the same, not because I necessarily want a life coach, but I've got a bunch of kids that were like me in my adult life that, there are expectations. There are things that they need to do. It's just they can't bring themselves to put a plan to it. So today, I'm not only someone that works on deck, but I mentor online. And you changed my view of what coaching is, Steve, and that's one of the reasons why I got into this. I love the feel of sort of helping people go from point A to point B, and this is my way of staying in the sport, but also helping people in a more profound way, which is giving them a plan, but doing it the way they want to do it.
I love it. And everyone go to swimwithmilo.com. I'm going to put all the information in the show notes. But for now, brother, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the time. And just best wishes and best of luck with anything and everything you've got going on within your world, brother. And just keep on going.
You too, Steve. Right. Thank you very much.
Good stuff. That was great. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Career Competitor. And before you leave, be sure to take advantage of your free one-time discovery call with me to see how I can be of service to you as a coach or potentially even your team. Depending on what it is you're looking for at this point within your career, I want to be able to serve you with 30 minutes of my time to see how I can be of use to you and help you on your path of continued growth towards your optimal self in order to find optimal performance. Be sure to reach out to me, Steve@careercompetitor.com, or just head to the website careercompetitor.com. I look forward to connecting with you soon, and bye for now.